pleasure welcoming you, everyone, wherever you may be. This is Politics Today, live on China's television. I'm Sean Kimale in Abuja. Well, it's not a good evening. I might say good evening to you, but for me, it's not a very good one, because on one hand, we have security challenges. On the other hand, there are economic woes. It does look like things are not looking very well. But tonight, we'll break it down. What are we really up against in this country? And how do we resolve or solve some of these problems? That's what we are up about tonight. But we continue our countdown over the strike action by university lecturers. It is 164 days since the university lecturers in federal universities in the country began their strike action, keeping students away from the classrooms. The standoff between the federal government and the university lecturers continue, and the students continue to be idle. President Buhari is giving a 2-week ultimatum to the Ministry of Education to ensure that the standoff is resolved. Nigerians are looking forward to the stakeholders getting their acts together to resolve what has become a national embarrassment. Well, let's get to hear some of the explanation as to some of the insecurity situation that we have found ourselves as a people. So, the security chiefs met with the president today. The members of the armed forces are assuring President Muhammadu Buhari of adopting a new strategy to deal with terrorists and bandits who are wreaking havoc across the country. This was disclosed by the National Security Advisor, Major General Babangana Mungunu, who briefed reporters after a Security Council meeting today in Abuja.
Everybody has to partake in this enterprise. The truth is that no country can ever overcome the difficulties of an asymmetric conflict by virtue of the fact that the enemy of the state is embedded within the population, within the wider society. It is true that the local people are averse, they're scared, they're worried, and there's no confidence. That is understandable. But without their support, without their cooperation in terms of giving information, it makes it very hard for the operational elements. A few days ago, troops of the Guards Brigade were ambushed and decimated. Had there been a collective effort by way of just snippets of information, we might have averted. Again, the members of the armed forces have also made a commitment that in the coming weeks, they've already started working on a new strategy to deal with these snippets of violence. And they've given their word, their commitment to the president that there will be a change in momentum, regardless of the fact that there might be certain institutional limitations which they face. But they've understood the enormity of the responsibilities that they have. Again, Council is in the process of winding up the special investigative panel on the Kuje incident. And the idea is to come up with recommendations, hold those who are supposed to be held accountable for their deeds, and to ensure that this type of thing never, ever, ever happens again in this country.
Those are the words of the National Security Advisor to the President, Babangana Mungunu. We dig deeper into the security challenges, the economic woes of the country. What is the way out? Where are we at as a country? Are we derailing as a people? If we're not, what exactly is going on? Well, if we are derailing, how do we get out of the present situation that we are in? That gets our attention tonight. Don't miss any part of the program, because solution, that's what we're trying to get out. Before we get into all of that, let's check out some of your political roundup stories.
governor of Ogun State, Dapo Abiodun, has asked residents of the state to seize the full advantage of the ongoing continuous voters registration exercise and get registered to be able to elect leaders of their choice in the coming general elections. He made the call during an on-the-spot assessment of the exercise at his ward in the Ikena local government area of the state.
It has enabled people to come out and vote without having to worry about going to work. I may consider making another day a work-free day so that we can all ensure that all those who want to exercise their franchise are able to do so.
A former commissioner of finance, budget and economic planning in Osun State, Wale Bolorunduru, is accusing the state government of misappropriating the Omoluabi conservative funds initiated by a former governor of the state. He made this known in Osogbo at a press conference held to brief the media on his political moves and allegation of misappropriation of the state funds, and also stressed that the debt profile of the state is not as projected from many quarters.
We took a leverage finance to recapitalize Omoluabi savings and loan and to escape the regulatory, what I would call stick of the central bank governor.
The governorship candidate of Accord Party in Sokoto State, Ibrahim Liman, has called on the party supporters and members to remain calm despite the omission of his name and other party candidates from Sokoto on the Independent National Electoral Commission's list of candidates. Mr. Liman made the call during a press conference at the Secretariat of the State Union of Journalists, NUJ, in Sokoto.
The leadership of our party at both national and the state levels is aware of this development and is taking necessary steps to do the needful. Meanwhile, I would like to appeal to all our supporters to remain calm, united, and loyal to our party.
And a group under the umbrella of Olu Political Consultative Assembly has chided the former secretary to the Imo State government, Uche Onyagocha, for what they termed repeated and unwarranted attacks against the Imo State Governor, Hope Uzodinma, and the state government over the insecurity situation in the state. At a press briefing in Owerri, the Imo State capital, the national president of the group, Rex Anunobi, says the group demands that the former secretary to the state government apologizes to the governor within 48 hours or be declared persona non grata as an enemy of the state.
Let him apologize and refrain from his criminality within the stipulated time frame. Popuka will call for the citizens' arrest of Uche Onyagocha wherever found in Imo soil by Olu sons and daughters for making himself an enemy of the state and Olu zone in particular.
Thank you so much, everyone. And let's get started. On the program today, I will also like to share with you some insight that my guests on the program will be giving us on how do you impeach a president? Because now it's not only in the red chamber, it's now also gone to the green chambers, both chambers of the National Assembly. There are talks and moves to impeach President Muhammadu Buhari. How can they do it? Has there ever in the history of parliamentary politics in Nigeria being a situation where a president is being impeached? Would they be able to succeed in this? How many people are really up against President Buhari in this move of removing him from office? The ultimatum given to him. In fact, some people have said 30 was too long, that 7 days could be enough to fix all of these issues. We'll get into that in a moment. But there is one dire situation that we are in. There is fire on the mountain. The economy doesn't look good, at least from a layman point of view. The dollar to naira different exchange rate from the parallel market is way over 700 naira as of today. Just yesterday, we got to understand that excess crude account, otherwise known as the rainy day funds, has been greatly depleted. The Minister of Finance, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, says state governors, in consultations with the National Economic Council, NEC, are aware of the withdrawals from the excess crude account, the ECA. The federal government says that the balance in the the excess crude account dropped from $35.37 million to $376,605 in June. Now, the excess crude account is the difference between the market price of crude oil and the budgeted price of crude oil in the Nigeria's budget. Now, this is actually saved for a raining day should there be a problem. Now, that has been depleted. The minister says that the account has had no accruals in the last 4 years because of the volatility of the commodity in the international market, adding that withdrawals have always been in consultations with NEC. Mr. Ahmed said the last approval that was given by the council was a withdrawal of $1 billion to enhance security. Let's take a listen to her after the FEC meeting yesterday.
The economy has been growing despite very, very difficult circumstances. But the other thing I need to remind us is that this administration has been able to realize the lowest oil and gas revenue compared to all previous administrations, but has also been able to do much more in terms of deployment of infrastructure. So we have done, the administration has done well. On the issue of the excess crude account, in the past 4 years, because of the volatility in the crude oil market, we have not had any accretion to the excess crude account. So what we have had has been gradually used up for different purposes, and it's always used in consultation with the National Economic Council, that is the governors, because this is a federation account. The last approval that was given by the National Economic Council was $1 billion to enhance security. We have been utilizing that. The last tranche of that has been finally released because the deployment to the security agencies are based on the contracts that they executed, and it's been used strictly for that security purposes. So it's been, what the utilization in the account is with the full knowledge of the governor.
Well, that is the finance minister, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed. Now, are we in an economic trouble in this country with what we are saying? Well, I'm not the expert here. Let's get some expert opinion. I'm being joined by a renowned political economist, Professor Pat Utomi. He joins us from Lagos. Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us tonight. I asked a question on Sunday whether or not Nigeria is broke from one of the ministers. Now, these are some of the questions that may be brought in the minds of people. Now, Prof, let me sound this warning. Some of my viewers tonight are not the ones that are very savvy with the figures. So I'd like us to break it down for the benefit of those of us who are not economically literate. So let Nigerians know what the facts of the issues are. First and foremost, I'd like to begin from here. Are we in trouble economically? Is Nigeria broke?
We are not only in trouble, we are in serious trouble. Nigeria is not only broke, Nigeria is broken. But that's not the... I heard you say we'll talk solutions today. You know, you cannot talk solution unless you understand the background to where we are. Let me say to you, Shehu, there's only one moral law that I know of in economics. And that law is that it is not acceptable to tax a generation to execute something that they will not benefit from. That is just the same thing as saying it is not morally accepted to take something that belongs to all generations of Nigerians and spend it in a way that future generations who are entitled to that do not get a share of it. But this is what governing in Nigeria has consistently done for more than one generation now. I have spoken to this matter several times in the past and provided a template for how we should deal with these issues. It's coming home to roost, it's coming home to haunt us in a way that a generation of Nigerians, young Nigerians who are already angry, will get even more angrier, much angrier, if they actually know what is responsible for where we are right now in terms of the economy and what we are about to pass to them because of our willful mismanagement of the Nigerian economy. Let me go back. In 1996, The Economist of London interviewed me. And in a sense of exasperation about how we are mismanaging crude oil revenues and all of that. I actually said in that interview, it was carried out by Richard Dowden, who was then the Africa editor of The Economist. I said, you know, if we could manage to get our generals, friends, and their politician collaborators, and buy them an island, and give them access to all of Nigeria's oil revenues, or all of Nigeria's oil, whatever, if they promise not to show their face, interfere with anything concerning Nigeria, that Nigeria will be much better off. The comment of The Economist, you know, The Economist always has an opinion on everything. The comment was fair comment. You know, this has continued in the way we've mismanaged oil revenues. In the mid-2000s, two Columbia University economists, Arvind Subramanian and Salah Imatan, wrote an IMF working paper that said, given the way the Nigerian government uses oil revenues, Nigeria's total welfare as a result of oil revenues would be better utilized if Nigeria did not have a government. In fact, they went ahead to suggest this distributable concept that if you just collected all of Nigeria's oil revenue, say, oh, there are 200 million Nigerians, there's $200 million earned from oil, send every Nigerian $1 or whatever, the welfare function, Nigeria will be better off than the way Nigerian government spends oil. It does more damage to prospects of prosperity in Nigeria than if people just got their money and spent it as they liked. Why this concept? There is a way that a reasonable person, if you are head of a family, so let's break it down. You get a sudden surge of income. You know that rainy days will come. Any responsible father will put away some and ensure that he manages in a way that when the rainy day comes, he can pull from it. Nigerian political class has systematically plundered Nigeria by, one, denying the future what belongs to them. When the concept of the so-called excess crude fund was being pushed by people like myself early in the Obasanjo administration, I recall that I was challenged by many people that the federal government is trying to take states' money. And one example I've used frequently from my friends in Lagos, the government of Lagos at the time, was how can you encourage the federal government to take our money? And I said, haba, you should be smarter than that. Like any mutual fund, if a portion of money that belongs to all of us were to be taken and invested for future benefits, like any mutual fund, the quantum of that money that belongs to the state and what accrues as profit or interest on those monies belong to that state and will be distributed accordingly. So the idea that federal government was taking your money doesn't make sense. I got pommeled until I argued them out of, you know, being able to make that conversation. But what has happened? We have turned to that saving anytime it suits us. We set up a sovereign wealth fund, give it a paltry amount of money. Go and look at our peers, how much they put in sovereign wealth funds. Many years ago, I had suggested, and I think I probably said it on your show before, that revenues that come to our country's purse should be broken into three, from crude oil or mineral oil deposits. Because, you see, these minerals, whether it's crude oil or gold, was put in the ground by God for all Nigerians forever. Not that an irresponsible generation will squander it and squander the future of their children, which is what we have done. What has happened is that in the way that we have spent money, we have even made creating wealth more difficult. And that's the point that is made when you say production versus revenues and, of course, conspicuous consumption. Nigeria's economy is not growing as it could or should grow because the way we spend this mineral resource wealth is preventing investments from being made in the economy. It's preventing production from taking place in the economy. But even more dangerously for where we are, having spent it the way we have spent it, it sends signals to investors, the international banking community, that we cannot be trusted with even that which we borrow, pushing us into a very precarious situation where we are today. The recommendation that I made in the past was that we should save a portion of this into the distributable pool fund, which is what we distribute to the states, all those who are in the fiscal transfer system, state, local government, and the federal government. And we should take a fairly modest benchmark for it, depending on how much crude oil was selling for. I suggested maybe like no more than $30 a barrel to go to that account. From $30 to, say, another benchmark of, say, $50 will go into what is essentially near money investments that we can call on when suddenly oil prices crash to below, say, $30 or whatever, and ensure that the budget is always funded at that level of $30 or so a barrel. And then anything above $50 goes to a future fund. And this future fund can only be invested in places where you can guarantee that the flows from that investment will be available to budget 50 years from now. I mean, countries like Norway, Qatar, and the others have incredible sovereign wealth funds, that of Saudi Arabia and all of that. We've not managed to do anything significant with ours. We've just created, an economy that's not growing, that can't draw on this for rainy days, cannot draw on it for the future of our children who have as much of a right to this. In my view, and I've said this publicly, it is irresponsible the way that we manage the Nigerian economy.
Let me jump in quickly. And so one will be listening to what the IMF is saying, and they've talked about renegotiating our debts as part of the trouble that we're facing currently. The Minister of Finance has said, look, there hasn't been any major accruals in the last 4 years because of the volatility of the commodity, which of course explains the reason why it's been stagnant. But it says $1 billion was the last approval given by the council for the withdrawal, and it's because of security. Now, if there is a money that you're supposed to keep... How
much more security have you got for that?
Say that again, Prof.
How much more security have you got for the spend of $1 billion?
So that's a big question. Does that $1 billion, is it commensurate to what we are seeing in the output of security? Isn't that a big question?
That's a big question. I mean, my argument is that when there is money that you can easily turn to and you will mismanage it, and that is the history of our country. If they didn't have access to that money, they would provide security. I'll give you a simple example of something that is fundamental to our country, even for security, but much more than for security, power, something we never seem to have. Nigeria and Egypt needed to improve their power supply situation. We needed it much more than Egypt. We both turned to the same company, Siemens. We spent months in our executive council going back and forth on how much Nigerian government would put into this, get this. Egypt did not plan to put one kobo in. They just created the environment for those actors to borrow money efficiently in the international system, provide this power. That power is already in. Ours is still traveling stories. And if Nigerians must know the latest, is that these equipment which are being manufactured in Ukraine are now stuck in the war. So all the money that Nigeria has saved and put into that business will probably not be around to give Nigeria any power for some time. A force majeure has probably been called on it. This is not the first time Nigeria has gotten into this kind of mess. We did it with the metro line in Lagos and ended up paying more money in penalties than this. The point is that there's something about how badly the political class in Nigeria has managed Nigeria that we need to begin afresh. We need to have new thinking people run Nigeria. We need to have people who are who wake up in the night wondering about, hey, this Nigerian resource that is so scarce, how are we utilizing it? Compare it, same Egypt I've talked about. Compare how many SUVs are running around in the government of Egypt and you guys in Abuja are running around in. Compare them and you will see how people who think act differently.
Prof, please make sense for the, I want to put, for the sake of some of our viewers tonight who may not even really get the point, the ECA, the excess crude account, what does this really mean? What does it mean for the food on the table and the money in my pocket? Let's assume that the Nigeria that we are talking about is Mr. Nigeria, whose salary has gone down from 100,000 to perhaps, or is still at 100,000, and the prices of food has gone up. He spends maybe 50,000 on food and transportation before, but now he spends about 80,000. But he has some money in savings. But at some point, he's almost done spending all the money that he has saved for the raining day. It does look like the situation of Nigeria as a nation, isn't it? Now, the big question here, where do we go? If you say we are in a terrible, we are in a big trouble, how much of a trouble and how do we get out of here?
We are in big, big, big trouble, but it is not the end of the world if we do the right things. And I give you a classic example. By some point in 1991, India, because of the bad policies of the Gandhi-Nehru era, was down to 3 weeks, only 3 weeks, import bill money in its accounts. That is technically approaching bankruptcy. At that point in time, India needed to do something dramatically different than it had done. Because of the circumstance of the time, Rajiv Gandhi hadn't been killed in this assassination attempt, and India, through the Congress I party, throwing up this quote-unquote old man called Narasimha Rao as prime minister. He appoints this unusual finance minister, Manmohan Singh, and they began a set of policies which, first of all, gave more confidence to the Indian diaspora, which began to bring money into India in a surge. In fact, I used to joke in my teaching back in those days that the biggest source of new investments in India was a village in eastern Nigeria. And they would look at me and say, Nri. But of course, it was a joke because non-resident Indians. They had the money they could invest, but they couldn't bring it into an India that was uncertain. Right now, today, if Nigeria wanted to overcome the blip in its challenge, and it wanted to go and borrow, because of things like a drawdown of the excess crude account, it would not be able to borrow at a competitive rate. Look, the 2008 global financial crisis did not scratch Nigeria because of the savings that President Obasanjo managed to make. Those provided a padding, a cushion for Nigeria to ride that crisis. And so when you talk about your foreign savings, part of what it does for you is provide confidence to those who are going to deal with you that you have the capacity. Yes, you don't want to use that money, but you have the capacity to pay if you wanted to, you needed to. And so they will lend you money on better terms and allow you to be able to fix the problem of that moment. Nigeria is not there now. Even China is reluctant to lend Nigeria. China was lending anyhow to anybody, but even China is reluctant to lend money to Nigeria right now. So when you are in that scenario, that poor man gets into a worse situation because he is vulnerable and left open to the rain, not like Nigeria was lucky because of the savings that it had at the time of the 2008 global financial crisis. So it is a direct hit to the poor guy because those who run the economy did not save as was appropriate. And by the way, this thing about there have been no accruals, Sean, what are we talking about? Oil prices have been up. Isn't that the excuse for why petrol prices need to go up and there is subsidy and all of that? It's because of higher crude prices and we are importing instead of essentially refining because we ruined the refineries with the mismanagement of the system. And so it's double whammy, double whammy. So how are we saying that there were no accruals because of volatility that's been on the negative side when crude oil prices have been up, and that's the excuse for why petrol prices are up? What are we talking about? We're talking about
how would you describe the management of the economy?
Abysmal. And I'll use it 3 times. Abysmal, abysmal, and abysmal. That's why we're not producing.
Government, but the APC government said that
production.
they will fix the economy. That's the promise that we got. Is it that the economy has been badly handled? Is that what you said? That they managed it badly, or what exactly is the situation? Or they just found themselves in a bad situation?
Just found? Are you kidding? Hey, the conditions have been rosier these last few years than they were at several points in the past of our country. Just look, the first thing you do when you get into, or you begin to cite crisis, is you begin to manage your consumption. Show me how the National Assembly has saved on its budget in the last 3 years as we cited things getting worse. Show me how the presidency has saved on its budget. Show me. We've been consuming like, there was no tomorrow. And that's why we are in the trouble that we are in. If we could only have stimulated production and consumption was to then pull or push the production, I would understand that. We're not producing, so we're importing, and we're consuming all those imported things beyond a level of what is decent. Ask me why all these government agencies should be buying all these SUVs, brand new ones, for all these officials who don't know what they are doing. Look, when General Obasanjo was president of this country, or head of state in this country, and I was a young, troublesome youth copper reporter attacking everybody, he said, look, crude oil prices have just dropped. We must go to a low profile. And as head of state, he reduced himself to a Peugeot 504 as the official car. And if the head of state is running a Peugeot 504, nobody could run on a car bigger. And it was called low profile. Show me one signal that those who run Nigeria today have gone to any kind of austerity measures, cutting down because Nigeria is in economic trouble.
Prof, in all of this, it doesn't sound good or it doesn't look good. For those who deal in the dollar, the exchange rate is racing to the roof. Someone was making a joke the other day when the exchange rate was just about 400 naira to the dollar at the parallel market. That if we're not careful, we are going towards 1,000 naira to the dollar. But it's looking like it's going to happen. God forbid, because that's a very bad situation. Tell us, Prof, tonight, how do we salvage the naira, the economy of Nigeria as it is today?
Shehu, the problems Naira is facing today, it was not caused in 1 week. You want to salvage it in 1 day. Let me put it very clearly to you. Markets are very important for progress. Institutions are critical wedges that make markets work. The foreign exchange market was built with painstaking effort over a period of time. The period that I talked about earlier of the 70s were periods when we had a block currency. Central bank approved every transaction. It was, very tedious process. And we knew that if the Nigerian economy was to resume growth, this was a part of the challenge of the structural adjustment program, we needed to go to markets for a variety of things, including foreign exchange. And gradually, systematically, with all the problems and corrections, we started with a 2-tier foreign exchange market called SPERM. We did all of these things, and finally, a foreign exchange market took place. It was fairly stable. Central bank managed it fairly well, and it was working for everybody, gave confidence to international investors, local investors, everybody alike. And then suddenly, in the last 6-7 years, we began to play games. We began to have multiple exchange rates. it was inevitable to anybody who understands institutions and economic performance that what is happening today would happen. So it has happened. It was predicted, it was predictable, it has happened. So the question is, how do we fix it? It won't be a one-day fix. We've got to bring back confidence that we believe in markets and that these markets will work. What are the ways we do it? First of all, we have to ramp up production. We have to reduce consumption of non-essentials. And so we've got to begin to do some austerity. And government is not just, don't waste this money that does not exist. How do we stimulate people to produce? How do we begin to export? In an economy that is exporting, devaluation is not necessarily the end of the world. It might actually be an incentive. I keep reminding people that in my time, the Japanese yen was several hundred to $1. And they built an export economy, and as they were, because their exchange rate was the way it was, their exports were considered cheaper abroad, and they continued to grow their export portfolio. And then, of course, their exchange rate was getting stronger and stronger. When the yen crossed 200, I still remember very clearly, became 198. There was almost a morning in Japan that the exchange rate was getting too strong. It would negatively affect their export. So the real issue here is that we are not producing, we are not exporting, and so we are hit very badly by the fact that we are so import dependent, and the prices of those imports are going to go crazy, especially now that we are even so dependent on importation of food. We should have been going for a clear national security thing with food security. We didn't. We're vulnerable because we're importing everything, what we eat, in a country that should be exporting food. Come on, Shehu. We can fix this if we just take ourselves seriously for a little bit. Keep people who think politics is adventure to go and make money out of politics, and get people who want to serve and earn immortality for giving of themselves for the good of the common person. Common good of all.
Thank you so much, Prof. I just, perhaps in my mind, assume that Nigeria is in a mechanic workshop right now and is getting someone who really knows how to fix it to get things fixed, because things are getting bad. Thank you so much, Prof, for your insight tonight, and hope that we get things better in this country. Thank you so much indeed for your thought.
I pray so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There is troubled water, not economy-wise now, politically speaking this time around. The minority caucus of the House of Representatives has joined its Senate counterpart to hand President Muhammadu Buhari a 6-week ultimatum to fix insecurity or face impeachment in the National Assembly. Minority Leader of the House of Representatives, Ndudi Elumelu, reviewed this after a closed-door meeting of the Joint Minority Caucus of the National Assembly earlier today. Honorable Elumelu says that the signatures will be gathered to impeach the president if the security situation is not addressed. Now, let's get some insight on what does the impeachment, can the president be impeached? We heard yesterday that it may be just a bravado, it may never happen, it may just be a political wish that may never see the light of day, and that's ultimatum. It's not realistic. These are some of the issues and reactions that we've gotten. Now, let's get insight from someone who has been in the National Assembly and a senior lawyer at that. Honorable West Idahosa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, joins us live here in Abuja studio. Thank you so much, Honorable SAN. And also we have a member of the National Assembly, one of the opposition that is looking to remove President Buhari in the National Assembly, Senator Ake Jeff. Thank you so much, Senator, for coming tonight.
It's a pleasure being here.
Now, I think it's that bad that you want the president out, Senator?
Yeah, thanks. Personally, I wish we don't come to that stage. Now, if you look at the optics, the visuals of yesterday, especially when the minority caucus went out to hold a press conference, you could see prominently amongst us was Senator Bokachua. He's a member of the APC. Okay?
He's a leader in the APC?
Yes. He's a member of the APC, and he's one of the most vociferous defenders of the president in the past 3 years in the Senate. Anything that came up, he would speak in support of the president. Senator Alero, where he has crossed over to the, to the opposition now, but he was also another strong defender of the president. Now, we went inside that room in the executive session, that behind the closed doors, and I want to report to you, even though I'm not allowed to divulge, the stuff that went on, but I can say confidently that there was no single person in that room that was happy with the state of affairs in this country. Economy, insecurity, and so on. The value of the naira that the professor was discussing.
Is it true that in all of the senators that were in the chamber yesterday, only 3 did not support impeachment of President Buhari? Is it true?
Yeah, but even of those that did not support impeachment, they agreed with every other person that the state in which we are in calls for some very strong actions. But they felt where it shouldn't be impeachment.
So, and okay, from the view, from the perspective of the senators, you believe that president getting out of the kitchen will resolve the heat of the kitchen?
You see, some people were saying, why didn't you just give, serve the impeachment notice right away? Why didn't you just give? We did that because, we gave 7 weeks, 6 weeks, because hoping that in those 6 weeks, steps will be taken that will satisfy people that, okay, maybe because of what the National Assembly has started, the president has woken up, or his team have woken up to, to try to fix the issues that are on hand. Because we have earned a toga of what do they call us, a rubber stamp assembly, a compliant Senate, because we have tried to bend over backwards to, accept everything that comes from the executive arm of government, just so that we will help them. They won't have the excuse of impeding their program that they promised Nigeria at the beginning of the administration.
So for those who have criticized the National Assembly, that you are moving for an impeachment now, are things just getting bad? What have you been looking that you have not been, you have not taken a strong stand before now?
Sharon, let me tell you that as politicians, if this step had been taken maybe 2 months back, I'm assuring you that we wouldn't have gotten the kind of support that we get today. Okay, but we've reached the tipping point where the capital of the nation is being assaulted in such a brazen fashion. I think nobody can take it any longer.
All right. Okay. Let me bring Honorable Wesida also here. Give us a benefit of your experience in the National Assembly. There hasn't been any in history, in our political history, any point where the parliament has been able to remove the sitting president through impeachment. Now, with what we've seen yesterday, do you think that the atmosphere will lead to such a thing as an impeachment?
Well, you see, thank you for this question. You understand that in a presidential system, in developing countries like Nigeria, it's founded on patrimonialism, patronage. So when the heat, or what we call creative tension, in parliament is generated, now, the forces of patrimonialism will go underground as they often do. That's why you haven't found any history from 1999 to date, indeed from independence to date, there hasn't been a successful removal of a president through a democratic process, largely to the level of poverty, which is quite high, mode of political selection, and the selection process itself. So now, in this case, look at the numbers. They will require 156 members of the National Assembly to even commence this process. That's 1/3 to sign that notice.
Of both chambers.
So even if all the senators were to sign, they will still require members of the House of Reps.
The concurrence.
To reach the 156 figure that can ignite a notice.
They said they are collating.
Yeah, that's fine. That's what I'm saying. The minimum they can get to be able to attract the attention of the Senate President will be 156. Now, when they get that notice, they then have to look for what amounts to gross violation, gross misconduct, and then put that before the Senate President, who, within 7 days of receiving it, circulates that notice to every member, including Mr. President himself. If Mr. President has a response, he will send the response to the Senate President, who will in turn circulate that response. Now, after that exercise, within 14 days from when that notice is presented to the Senate President, both houses will have to, by resolution, decide whether or not they wish to investigate the allegations, and they will require 2/3. In other words, the Senate will be forced to produce 72 senators to support an investigation of the allegation. The House itself will be required to produce 240 persons in support of that allegation.
Okay, so let's look at it. Let's analyze it. Two things is generating the heat the more. Now, some of the lawmakers are angry that they are not able to get a ticket to return. So, in fact, those who are of the main, at the ruling party are not happy. In fact, some of them are cross-covered. Senator Alero is one of them that has crossed to the other side. Now, that is pushing them, and some of them do not care. They will speak up and they will take that move. That is one signal that we've gotten. The other one is the fact that the security situation is such at a point that none of them is bold enough to speak in favor, because we've tried as much as possible to invite people to come and speak for government or the APC, but they found it very difficult to do. People are finding it difficult to support what is happening. So could these two factors help the cause of those calling for impeachment?
Well, it still may not help it. It will give it the momentum that it requires to walk up the president and to get him to sit up. Now, the reason why, those numbers are huge. They are huge. And don't forget also...
Is it an impossible number to get?
It's possible. But elections are coming. There are those who already have, just as you have aggrieved persons who didn't get ticket, you have those who also had a return ticket. They too will be looking to play the role of loyal party men.
Do you think President Buhari cares about this situation?
He does not. He definitely, if you look at the last interview he had with you, he made it clear he doesn't care about who succeeds him. He doesn't care. In fact, he gave a warning. He made it clear that anyone, he said everything is on record. I don't know what is on record, but anyone who dares to invite him to give evidence before any court of law when he leaves will be in trouble. Those are his words. And so, whether or not this heat is going on, he may not really know. But
is there any heat in the ASUU Rock Villa? Because the National Assembly, just less than a kilometer to the villa, are sending the heat. But it doesn't look like the heat is getting the villa, is it? With the reaction we are getting from the NSA, do you see any heat?
If you listen to the spokesman of the government, of the executive itself, I mean, they are trivializing it. They do not understand that what we are facing is about the preservation of the sovereignty of our country, which belongs to the people. So do not be surprised that those who represent the people are at the forefront now of the preservation of this sovereignty. I do think that in a long time, this is the first time that we are finding this type of momentum in the last 7-8 years. It's been an hallelujah affair. Everybody pretending not to know that Rome is burning, pretending to sleep while Rome is burning. But right now, there seems to be a conscious effort to push the president.
It looks like the roof is coming down on everyone, and they have to Now, then, I mean, you are going to be on the hot seat, Senator, because you are an elected official, and Nigerians, a lot of them are not happy about the situation of things. If you ask those whose family members have been killed or kidnapped in the den of the kidnappers or the bandits, they will tell you they are not happy at the moment. And you heard what Honorable Wesida also said. Look, it doesn't look like there is any heat anywhere. And it might be possible for you to get the numbers, but it might be impractical for you to get the president out.
I already said here that I wish that we don't come to the stage where they will actually get the president out. I wish that he would take this heat that is being generated from the legislative arm of government and wake up and get his team to wake up and do the right thing. I heard...
Is the threat for real? Or you were just using it as a means to an end?
We've just started. We've given 6 weeks. Let's see what happens.
Do you really mean it? The opposition? Do you really mean it?
Of course. Well,
you are ready to take up the executive
on this matter? If the right thing is done, there will be no point for it, Shehu. If the right thing is done. But if it's not done, I mean, like I told you, there's hardly any person on that floor that said, no, we are happy with the state of things. Okay? So I cannot speak emphatically for anybody, but by what I saw and the discussions that I saw, I think that everybody is sufficiently angry to go on with what I said.
You know the reason why I asked that question? You have a teacher in a private school, and there is a law that you're never going to use cane on any student. And you know you're never going to use, but you are threatening. It does look to me that you're just a threat. You just want the attention of the president.
Well,
and perhaps...
Well, Sharon, if it's just a threat and the threat gets things done. It's still the same effect.
Absolutely.
It's still the same
what
effect.
we're concerned as a people is that no Nigerian should be killed any longer.
Exactly.
Let our security be fixed. Abuja is on the threat because of the security threat that we are receiving. Now, the question is, what is the way out of this? If this threat does not answer the question, what will?
Well, the thing is, they have pulled the trigger, and it probably will be too late for them to pull it back. Now, if this threat doesn't, they may have no alternative than to try to push for the numbers. Okay? Because this is a very vindictive government. You have to understand that. And in the politics of presidentialism, you are dealing with enormous powers on the executive side. So they will have to find a way to filibuster the presidency. Two ways they can do that now. If they cannot get those numbers, they must use the power of the purse. They must get that power of the purse to checkmate the executive and ensure that this type of flamboyance, this type of expenditure, this type of borrowing that we are witnessing in the midst of insecurity is brought to a halt, you know.
Thank you so much. Indeed, it's a pleasure having you, Senator Okochev and Honorable Wesley Dawson, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Thanks so much, gentlemen, for coming.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Our concern here is about Nigeria and Nigerians. We want things fixed and done. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching today. I'm Sean Kimale. Bye for now.